Welcome to Drive Time, the UCLA Anderson podcast. I'm Dylan Stafford, your host today. I've got a very special guest.
Hi, it's so good to be here.
Okay, we're going to try to keep this tight, but I could talk to Amber for days. This is Amber Jackson. And what's special about, well, there's many things special, but one thing is Amber's actually a graduate of the class of 2015. We're recording this in 2025, which is a decade post-MBA.
Yes.
So, where are they now? What happens after you get this big degree? Well, you're going to get to hear from one of my very favorite alum. And if you really fall in love with Amber, which I trust you will, you can go back and hear the original interview that we did about a year after she graduated back in 2016, right in front of a big crucible in her career that we're going to talk about. So high level, she's a leadership and career coach. She is the founder of Hype and Harvest. And I love this on her description. I coach overachievers, to become strategic leaders who drive glass ceiling shattering results. And she's done this in her own life. She's a first generation college graduate. She's the first person in her family to go into corporate America. And she has an extensive corporate resume that we'll talk about. And she's the first person in her family to earn a graduate degree. So she's taken her life story and she's now paying it forward. Extremely active alum. She was here for our Global Access program back in December. She was here at the Velocity Conference last year. She was at Winter Connect with us 2 weeks ago on a Saturday night, 241 FEMBAs from 13 generations, all networking. So, it's congruent that she's an active alum because she was an extremely active student, which is where we got to work with each other in FEMBAssadors, FEMBA Council back in the day. Sometimes we joke that we have extra student body presidents that year. So, like that. So before FEMBA, she was at Warner Brothers. Post-FEMBA, she went to Disney, then back to Warner Brothers, then to Wonderful. Then she founded her current company, Hype and Harvest. And just a little bit of who this podcast is exactly hopefully benefiting. Her first interview, if you go back and listen, is really about the first year experience and still stands the test of time a decade later. We're going to a little bit aim at the third years. So those of you who are on the downhill second half of the FEMBA journey, we're going to speak to that a little bit. So with that long introduction.
Very long introduction.
Yes. You deserve it. Thank you for coming in. Thanks for making this work.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I love every conversation I have with you, whether it's being recorded or not. So I just feel like everybody else gets to see a little bit of like the magic that happens when you and I are in a room together. So yes, in a completely platonic way. Sorry.
Yeah. No, and speaking of, my wife says hello because my wife is a huge fan.
Same.
My wife's met many alumni over the years, but Amber, she's a big fan.
Yeah.
All right, so this is our kind of lightning round, just to warm up. Not like you need a warm up, but these are more like one-word answers, and then we'll start to get into the big story. So, where'd you go to high school? What state?
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Langley High School. Yes.
Excellent. College?
Carnegie Mellon, also in Pittsburgh.
Major. Major?
Oh, my major was, I have a bachelor's in English and Technical Communications. I'm a writer.
Yeah. I forgot that. Okay.
I forgot that too. I just had to remind myself.
That's what makes it lightning round.
Yeah.
Let's see. And then I sort of said this, but pre-FEMBA, your company and title. So what did you come in here as?
So I arrived as FEMBA. I was a finance manager at Warner Brothers. I had been 10 years into my career at that point. Really quickly, I started out of undergrad as a IT associate at Johnson & Johnson, moved to KPMG as a senior associate, and to Warner Brothers as a finance manager, which is when I found FEMBA.
Excellent. And when you were, I know this is less about your zero and first year experience, but walking in the door, if you can remember, did you feel like I'm going to switch, I'm going to enhance, I'm going to be an entrepreneur? How would you have maybe described your career aim walking in the door?
I definitely was a career switcher. So when I started FEMBA, I was in finance and entertainment. I knew I wanted to be in marketing. It's in my essays that I wanted to be a marketer in entertainment. And I just felt that it was more valuable in entertainment to keep working and keep building relationships over 3 years versus stepping away. I also didn't like the stopping of income. So FEMBA was the obvious choice.
Very good. Very good. And then when you graduated, how would you have described yourself?
I was still a switcher, right? Like I switched companies and continued believing that I was going to keep moving up in my career by either internal promotion or switching to a new company.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the entrepreneurship was downstream, like 6-7 years post graduation. That's when.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in Anderson, it really, I'm not sure if it's as close to, but it really branded itself as a home for entrepreneurs.
Oh yeah.
And I had a lot of classmates who were into entrepreneurs. And again, me building my marketing skills, I would volunteer to work on, people's projects who were launching new ideas and wanted market research. I love that. But I was not ever bitten by the entrepreneur bug anytime while I was at Anderson. It was, I love this for you all, but it's not for me. I'm a corporate girlie.
Yeah. Yeah. I think many people are like, yeah, entrepreneurship, it's great for you, but they're not interested. And then, it's like you hang around here. It's in the water.
Yeah.
It's in the air.
In the water.
All right, last question, very, very important. This is an ice cream question. Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, favorite?
Chocolate, all day, every day.
All day, every day. All right.
Chocolate, yes.
Woman knows what she likes.
Yes.
All right, so that was the easy stuff. So, I'm going to shut up now. So what I love about this opportunity to speak with you, it was so fun seeing you at the Winter Connect event a couple weekends ago and prior events. You've had a decade to use this investment you made in yourself.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to just kind of be quiet, and I'd love, for you to share some of the reflections you have about, the classes that have impacted you, how the experiences impacted you, any of that you would like to share. Cause again, our graduates walking towards commencement in a couple months.
Yeah.
They're about to.
Yeah. It's interesting because, again, highly recommend listen to the first episode or the first episode. Yeah, it was fire. And in it, you hear just how much I loved my time at FEMBA. And I would say over the past decade, that love has just deepened, that FEMBA just continues to be the well that I can go back and that I can draw from, right? So when you think about like 10 years later, what's still impacting me, it's funny, while I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur during my FEMBA time, obviously I did post because I'm an entrepreneur now. And when I wrote my first business plan, I was like, how do I even start to organize my thoughts around this crazy idea that I have to create? I went back to my GAP business plan and looked at that structure, that framework. That's literally how I wrote my first business plan, is I took the table of contents from my GAP business plan, created a new document. And I was like, I'm just going to keep working at this until I can figure it out. This was a couple of years ago before we were like, I wasn't yet really using AI like ChatGPT in this way. So I wrote it from scratch. But that was what it took me a couple of months to write it and just really work through that as an example. I think about now as a coach, I use principles that you hear in the first episode, go back there, but like we talk about negotiation and how I learned about negotiation and win-win and growing the pie from the late Professor Janessa Shapiro. And it's something that I teach heavily with my clients today with women around how to negotiate and get comfortable with negotiating. The 3 R's, relationships, results, reputation, cornerstone of my business right now and my coaching practice and principles.
Tell them again, because that's Professor Ullmen.
Professor Ullmen. Yeah. I think I forget the class. It was definitely my 3rd year. It's the advanced level course, but he teaches that success is really driven by this framework of the 3 R's, results, relationships, and reputation. And especially when I think about a post-FEMBA career, the way that came to life for me was that we heavily over-index on results. We just keep focusing on results because results are what get you movement early in your career, right? But the older that you get, the more mature that you get, it's less results and it's more the other 2 R's that are going to be the biggest indicator of how far you're going to go in your career and the pace of acceleration.
And they are, so relationships and was the 3rd one?
Reputation.
And reputation.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
So, and I tell you, I just did like a LinkedIn Live on it in the past month or so. I taught it at a workshop 2 weeks ago that I was at a large conference, and it is still radical for people to really start to think about, wait, what if it's not just about my results that's going to be the difference maker in how I move through my career?
Well, perfect segue. And let's talk about Hype and Harvest, because I was a corporate girl, and I love following you on LinkedIn. You got to check out her LinkedIn posts, because you are doing it. The posts are big. They are obviously polished. They have bold messages. They're engaging. Mm-hmm. Even before we got to see each other live recently, I've been,
what's she doing over there?
What's she doing over there? So, so out of the post-MBA corporate years and into founding Hype and Harvest.
Yeah. So what's interesting is when I re-listened for this conversation, I listened to the last episode, and as I was listening and reflecting, I was like, that episode is actually a really great gift to me, and I'm going to not get emotional, but it's a gift to me because it is forever a perfect capstone of where I was at that time in my life. Mm-hmm. And right after that episode aired in early 2017, my life and my work life and the way that I showed up for work became challenged in ways that it hadn't before. So before that, it was all about the work, the skill set, a little bit of relationships and reputation. But what I found in my career, so I was at Disney for a few years. I went back to Warner Brothers and then to wonderful company. And so I kept having incidents in my career that called forward a different power in me. So I remember still having really just unattractive behaviors from people that I worked for. If I could say it frankly, I remember the first time somebody actually yelled at me. They didn't like some work that I had done, and they raised their voice and yelled at the top of their lungs to me. And I think my body was shocked before my mind could even process what was happening. And it was one of those, in my story, it was one of those watershed moments where forget the results, the promotion that I'm driving for, the work that I'm performing. What's not going to happen is you're not going to disrespect me in this way. And I will still remember when it happened, I walked away because I needed to find safety first. And I walked away and I was like, oh, I can't let this just go by. And I calmed down. And the next day I went to work and I asked for time with that person. And I was like, hey, yeah, we had a conversation yesterday. And I get that there are some things that you think I did or was undermining you. And I don't agree with those. But here's what's not going to happen. You don't get to raise your voice at me. There are two people in this earth who can raise their voice at me, and I call them mom and dad. And they do it on shaky ground as well. And we had a very straightforward conversation. The person did not apologize. They said they saw that it got out of control and got heated. And I was like, no. I'm not asking for it. You don't have to apologize, but I'm telling you that you won't do this to me again, or we're going to have a real problem. That's not about the work. And that was me just standing in my values. Those types of stories and occasions kept coming up in my career. And the more I kept working, the less I could tolerate bad behavior. I think it culminated when 2020, when we were all home during the pandemic and George Floyd happened. And one of my proudest moments in my career was that Monday, I think it was Tuesday, because it was Memorial Day weekend. There was all of the protests. So I think it was the next day that we went back to the first time we all came to work after this moment of reckoning. Is 9 a.m. sitting on an all-team meeting, 60 people. And my senior executive, SVP, head of my department, he and I have a good relationship, but he's talking about business. And I'm looking at the team, Microsoft Teams chat, and there's a private team chat that me and other people of color are in. And all I see are people just saying, I can't do this. I can't believe they're asking me to go to work. I can't believe they're asking me, I just want to crawl into a ball and cry. And about 30 minutes into that 1 hour meeting, I sent a DM to my leader and I was like, I need 10 minutes at the end of this call. Before everybody drops, I need you to give me 10 minutes. And he said yes, didn't ask what he knew, he just said yes. And I turned to I'm literally on camera listening to a meeting, and I turned to my second screen and I'm just like, Amber, what is it that you need to say in this moment? Because I, at the time, was the highest ranking person of color, on the leadership team. And I wrote things down and he was like, hey guys, Amber has something to say. And literally I come off camera, and I love the word that you used a few moments ago, polished. Polished is one of my values. I love just coming across as very polished. I came off camera and people could see I had no makeup, hair in a knot. You could see I had obviously been crying. And I literally was like, I'm actually speaking to my peers on the leadership team, and I'm doing it in front of all of you. this is not like any other moment. Like people, especially people of color on your team, are hurting right now. If a person of color works for you, I need you to go and reach out to them and ask them, what is their capacity to do work right now? And I need you to accept whatever they say. If they say they need to take a day, give them a day. If they need to take a week, give them a week. But you need to listen to them and do what you can. That's what leadership is in this moment, is figuring out how to clear the path so that they can heal the part of their humanness that is being hurt right now because of what's happening in the world around us. And I said some other things, but it was, I mean, like, Jello, when I tell you, like, I was the Looney Tunes Acme, like, heart beating out of my chest because I had never done that before.
Well, who had? I mean, excuse me.
Yeah.
No, you had not. And most people had not and never will.
And it was so scary because I'm like, I knew I was spending my social capital and I had no idea.
You were putting
I put all of it. I was like, and what I've told myself in that moment and ever since is I was like, if this career blows up, if it ends because of me standing in my values, I'm okay with that. And I had to just figure out how to be okay with that. My values didn't have to go on the shelf anymore when I went to work.
You're getting me for clip.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just, we got the third year FEMBAs. I'm sorry, I'm a little verklempt. Like my wife is writing a book and she doesn't have her title yet, but something like The Things They Forgot to Tell You.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a series of seeing, my wife's an executive coach, as is Amber. And when you coach people in the last third of their career, you're coaching about moments like these.
Yeah.
And there's no rule book. And I don't mean to, it might have been in a lesson in the MBA program, but it's one thing to hear it and it's 1,000% different to live it.
Yeah.
So those of you third year FEMBAs, here's a person who's walked in your shoes, who's a decade ahead of you. And even just knowing that a crucible moment may come or will come if I'm going for it. Like the only way to not have a crucible moment is to just play small.
Yeah.
But that's being a cog in the machine versus being a leader.
Yeah. I love the title of her book. That's what I'm holding in right now as I'm listening to you. The Things They Forgot to Tell You. Third year FEMBAs, they forgot to tell you that you still have power.
Yes.
That's what they forgot to tell you, that you have power.
It's not when I'm an SVP, you were saying.
It's not when, right? Like we're in this, when you work in corporate especially, you're constantly being told to cede your power to somebody else, that the person who ranks above you has more power than you, and that the person who ranks above you has more knowledge or more wisdom than you. That's what you're being fed every day. And yes, the person above you has more power than you, but that does not mean that you have no power. That's what they forgot to tell you, is that like, yeah, I get that my SVP has more power than me, but I have power. I have social capital. And I get to spend it at this level. Now it will look different, right? Like how I approach it might look different. It might get expressed differently. But even now, like as a leadership and a career coach, I coach people who are in career transitions. And all I hear is how awful the market is and how they're being ghosted by recruiters and how they're being asked and like feeling so defeated because of how we've dehumanized, how we value people's skills in a job marketplace. And what I always am reminding clients and people that are not clients is like, you have power. Mm-hmm. It might not be the power that you want to have. It might not be as much power, but you have power. And I need you to connect to that, to start making decisions from the place of connected to your power, not trying to make decisions from the place where you feel like you have no power, because we're just not making good decisions from there.
And you have a commitment that healing is a part of life, but is a part of a corporate life. Yeah. And tell people what that commitment, what that commitment is to you and how you're forwarding that in your work. Yeah.
So I continued having a great career. I mean, I loved my corporate experience, but I also saw a lot of just where the way that we are learning to treat each other within a corporate workplace is harming how we see and value each other and our humanity. And unfortunately, it's funny, we used to always joke that you're going to spend more time with your company and your like coworkers than you are with your family. And so the flip side of that also means that the behaviors you're learning about how to value humans and be with humans is being overly influenced by the way that we treat each other at work.
Yeah.
Right. That's where we're actually learning how to treat one another and how to value one another's contributions, not what we might be learning at home or at church or somewhere else. So we need to go corporate, and the way that we work is the overriding influence on how we show up in this world. And so we need to look at where it needs to heal. So what I love to do in Hype and Harvest is talk to rising leaders, right? People who are still kind of, growing, defining who they want to be as leaders, and will ultimately be leading the new companies that are starting or growing and scaling today. I want to catch them on the upswing, not when you're like, a 7-figure CEO who has to serve, a board of directors and a stock market price and trying to get you to change what you've been doing. I want to influence who you're becoming. And so if we can create wholehearted leaders who are able to, I always say, let's lead across product, profit, people, and purpose, right? Let's bring it all to the table and think about how we identify our leadership.
Product, profit, people, and purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Product, profit, people, and purpose. She said it fast. I want you to hear it.
Product, profit, people, and purpose.
Yeah.
How we lead across all 4 of these dimensions and cultivating a way of leading wholeheartedly, I think has the best chance of healing corporate America, right? How do we heal burnout, right? And the way people experience burnout.
Anybody tired on this podcast?
Aren't we all tired, right?
Because I think just to I wonder sometimes is the MBA the ticket to getting 2 jobs for the price of 1? It's a poor way to express it, but I'm like, so many MBA graduates end up with these 80-hour, the first few years, these 80-hour jobs. Well, that's just 2 jobs under one human being's head, and
yes.
And that's fine for a couple of years, pay your dues, whatever, introduce yourself to an entire industry or market, historically, iBanking and consulting, work those hours. But you can't do that for a decade, nor 2 or 3.
Yeah, and I'm interested in questioning, why do we have to do 80 hours a week? Anyway, yeah. Right? And that's a match of one, our own personal ambition, right? So that's why I say I talk to overachievers.
Yeah.
Because overachievers feel like I've got to keep up with what my friends are doing or see the,
or whatever my friends are doing, I'm going to do plus 15%.
I got to do plus 15%. Or if everybody else is coming out of B school making 6 figures, I have to make 6 figures, even if I'm probably going to leave Los Angeles and go back and live with my family in Des Moines, Iowa. Really? You need 6 figures? Why? Mm-hmm. Right? I want us to go back to really just connecting to, people say, connect to your why. Why are we doing this? And how do we want our time to be valued? And I speak to leaders of really? It takes 80 hours a week for your team to do it. That's why you sometimes hear really toxic messages in the news about if you're not here 5 days a week and, working 10 hours a day, then, you're not qualified to be on this team. And I'm just sure, but that also means there's some really good talent that is going to say no, because we want to have families and lives and well-rounded lives. So, so with the company, I love talking to overachievers to help them realize that there's no amount of overachieving really is just this over prioritization of results, right?
Yeah.
You think
with the 3 R's.
With the 3 R's, you're just going all in on results. And you think that by doing more work, taking on more assignments is going to get you what you're asking for. And 9 times out of 10, it's not. It's actually balancing results and boosting relationships and reputation. That's probably going to be a bigger predictor of your success in leadership versus the ability to drive results. So with overachievers, it's about rebalancing across the 3 R's in the coaching that I do. And a lot of it is also about reconnecting to purpose, right? That 4th P, that yes, it's not just about managing a product, driving profits and leading teams, but you get to show up and you get to be prioritized. So what's fulfilling to you, and how do we make sure that that's getting serviced as you design the career of your dreams?
So, and how many years are you into leading
Hype and Harvest?
Hype and Harvest, yes.
I'll have my 2-year anniversary in May of this year.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Wow. And the whole thing, if you can survive the first 2 years in a startup, your chances of success go way up. What's like one thing you like most about what you've achieved so far? What's most satisfying?
Truthfully, I do love the people that I have some really amazing clients that I'm fans of. They are fantastic humans, and they're just coaching with me to find the confidence to let more of who they are show up at work. Right. That's the thing, is that it's who they are. It's just, how does it get to show up at work? But I would say what I'm most proud of is actually, this has changed me, right? Becoming an entrepreneur has changed me, right? Like I've had to do so much work on myself, right? Just like self-worth, like what am I worthy of? The confidence that like I deserve to put my best time, talent, skills into my idea. Like year one is so much of just realizing that like, hey, this skill set that I have, I could take it to corporate and like, they would love to give me a multi 6-figure job for me to do what I do, right? Like that's the quality of the skills that I have in the marketplace. And so like that first year is just every day saying, yes, Amber, you could go back to corporate and do something that you are expert at. Or if you could just hang out and be new at this for a little bit longer, could you just hang out? Like, that's what I would ask myself every day. Is like, could you just hang out and be a novice at something for one more day? Because that's what's happening, right? Is like, it's a workout of your identity because it's comfortable. The ego wants to be in the identity that like, look at me, look at the resume that I've had. But guess what? When you're like trying to talk to, your first client to hire you for a coaching package, they don't care what e-commerce team you led where. That's not why they're hiring you. They're asking you, who do you coach? How do you get results? How do you help people? And you're just like, okay, right? So that's been the work that I've had to do with myself, and just the commitment to stay in this, to keep building, even when it would have been easier. Some days it still would be easier to go and work for somebody else. But just staying in it has really been the joy.
Oh, I love it. I mean, got to meet fantastic humans and make a difference with them. Yeah. And, it's an inside job.
Yeah, it's an inside job. Yeah. I think that's the fun part, because 10 years ago when I left FEMBA, never had an idea that this is what my life would look like. And that's what I offer the third year FEMBAs, right? Like, I hope that as you're completing this journey, that what you're stepping into looks a little bit like what you hoped it would be 3 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, and that was a big moment for me. I love that I walked out of here with my marketing job at Disney. Like, check, I did it. And the subsequent 10 years have I'm like, wow, how I thought I would grow is I grew in completely different ways, like a tree. Like I grew new branches, I grew new roots. What I stand on, what I stand in is a lot different. And I think that's actually what's been most exciting from 10 years ago to now, is I'm just like, wow, I had no idea that my education was setting me up for this.
And scene. I got nothing. All right. Okay. Yeah. Well, and we do have a time constraint, but thank you. I'm like, wow, everyone should hear that. And like we're a business, we're not a business, we're a school, but we have a business paradigm, and it's meeting expectations and exceeding expectations. Yes, it's the walk out the door accomplishments, hopefully meet and hopefully exceed, but it's the unfolding of this thing. Yeah. Because our pillars. Think fearlessly. Okay, I changed my gray matter. Share success. Okay, I opened up my professional network qualitatively and quantitatively. I know more fantastic humans. And then to drive change, it's like that X factor of, I can look in the mirror and say, well, my normal rate is $500 an hour, but I have a friends and family rate for $400. I watched my wife practice in the mirror. I forget what the number was, but my wife's been an entrepreneur, single, a female-owned business since 2009. And those first couple of years where she had those business development meetings and she was stating her hourly rate, she had a business coach who helped her practice, just saying it with And you got to say it like you've been there.
You got to say it like I literally was coaching somebody this morning. I'm her business coach. And I was like, no, it's me. Like, I am doing that. Like, I just took price because I'm like, yo, I'm fully booked, y'all. So that means price has to go up to get my time. And I told her, I was like, I just told somebody like the third time. And I'm like, the knees are a little less wobbly.
On Zoom, they can only see
it's happening up above. Yes. Yes, the knees got a little less wobbly.
But that is an inside job, because until I can look at myself in the mirror, I'm never gonna woo a client.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, like, and you're gonna take me through it, right? Like the thinking strategically, when you were going through it, I was like, yeah, Anderson is in all three of these places with me today. Right? Thinking strategically, I mean, I won't curse, but I became a bad mamma jamma in business and strategy because of my Anderson education, right? Like the intellect, that's all came from here. When I think about the heart, the relationships, like I have really good friends who have been with me one of my closest friends is somebody that I met in like my core section. Right. And like she's a Trojan, but like we find a way to make it work. We make it work.
We're inclusive. We're inclusive.
Yes. But it's been like a dear friend, right, that I continue to like, do life with. And the confidence comes from starting the business, right? It became from, well, did I know how to start a business? No. Had I ever been an entrepreneur or had a side hustle? No. But I knew I went to college with people who were at Anderson. And I was like cocky enough to say, well, if they can do it, I can do it, right? It's the same education, right? Just got to apply it a little differently. And the difference maker is, that's what I think it calls for. Like, what's the point of building up all of this social capital, being an amazing employee, growing in your career to become like a senior manager, a director, a senior director, a vice president? What's the point of building it all up if you never spend it? I chose to spend it aligned with my values around how I wanted work to be a healthier, happier place for humanity. That's how I spend it. But if you're out here as a FEMBA, if you're an EMBA listening to this and you're hitting, look, C-suite leadership skills live at every level. That's what I say. That's my slogan. C-suite leadership skills at every level. You have power at every level, but I understand that power grows. So if you're at the director and you're senior director or a vice president, I just would challenge, how are you spending your capital? Who are you spending your social capital for? If it's only benefiting yourself, I'm going to challenge that. But like, where are you stepping out and giving people on your team opportunities to shine? Where are you stepping up for people who you can see are hurting in their own life and they need some cover from you at work because they need to go deal with an aging parent, a difficult journey to parenthood, right? Like, these are real things that people go through while they are working.
While they show up and pretend everything's perfect.
While they show up, right? But if you're a good leader, you see it. And so how do you create space? Like, I remember when I got an office at one of my companies, before George Floyd and I had an office, I was the place where people of color knew they could come and like frustrate and vent about the things we were already seeing. Like, George Floyd wasn't the first one, right? We had seen a long history, unfortunately, of like violence like that in America. And I still remember like people would come into my office just so that they could close the door and like exhale or cry before they had to go out to their next meeting. And I was sometimes in the office and sometimes I wasn't, but they knew that my office was open. I was like, if I'm not in there and you need privacy for just like life for a minute, that's how I spent my capital. And so that's really where I would love for
sharing your physical office. Yeah, because when you're in a cube and you're having a human moment, it's so exposed.
It's so public, right? Yeah. And so I was like, I had an office that was big enough. It had a couch in it. And I was like, yo, if you need to just come in here and sit and I need to just send emails, like just do it. Because I understand the weight and what it is to have to show up. I mean, I'm remembering that the office moments. I remember one time I was in a meeting and like somebody had touched my hair. That's the weirdest, like, my hair is not for petting, right? Like, but I get it. It's braids or what is it? Somebody had touched my hair and I was like in a large meeting and I was like, no, this is not okay. I was very kind about it, but other people heard. And like somebody followed me, like one of my colleagues, a white woman, she followed me to my office and she's like, Amber, I'm really sorry. I know what that feels like. It reminds me of whenever I was pregnant and people would touch my belly with that. And I was like, why are we patching people's bodies without asking them? Like, what is happening in corporate America?
Boundaries.
Yeah. So I would love for like third year FEMBAs, like I'm talking to you, the recent graduates, the FEMBAs, just like really take stock of what's the power that you do have. Don't focus on the power you don't have.
Yeah.
Focus on what you do have and what are you doing with it? Because, what's the point of giving you more power if you're not going to share it and spend it on others?
All right.
Okay.
We're never going to get done in time. Let's do some show and tell.
Okay. Yes.
This is maybe out of order, but
yes.
we'll weave some. We've brought some pictures. And
yes.
We'll hold them up and show them on the screen, and you
can
speak to them.
Yeah. So this first photo, it's so important to me. You asked about Hype and Harvest.
Yeah.
I actually had another business idea before Hype and Harvest. I was still working at the time when I took this photo, but it was the first time I allowed myself to play with the identity that I am an entrepreneur. So I went to this conference that was just for creators in the creator economy, people who are having side hustles, full-time businesses. And so I love this photo because it reminds me of giving myself, that was such a big permission giving moment to even begin to think about what this journey looks like. And, fast forward a year and a half into my business and I'm sitting on a panel at E-Tail, which is one of the largest conferences for e-commerce professionals. They had a women in retail E-Tail leadership.
Where was that?
We're at the JW in Palm Desert in February. Perfect. And just, 7 amazing women talking about leading from our seat at the table. What are we doing? Not only how do we get there, but what are we doing so that the women coming behind us get to do it faster and with more ease. And I just don't want people to have the same struggles that I did. That's always my goal, is that when I break through a barrier, you're going to have challenges, just don't have the same ones.
Also new upgraded challenges.
Yeah. And I think, I brought in and talked about, in this season of my life, I love that I get to do large scale workshops. And so one of the things I'm learning with I draw back my experience from Professor McCann with presentation, right? So as I start thinking about now, I'm not presenting slides that get printed out on an 8.5 by 11, but they get projected on movie screen size theaters. Everything he taught me about presentation design comes flooding back to the forefront.
That's awesome.
When you're designing for that space, right? An example of how the education keeps being something that we can mine from over and over again. And I love that as much as, yes, there is education from 10 plus years ago that I mine from, there is something from UCLA today for me at 9, 10 years. I'm not counting 10 years until June 15th, 2025.
All right.
So I'm only in
almost,
9 years.
Almost 10.
Almost 10.
I respect that.
But last year I had the chance to attend Velocity, the UCLA Anderson Women's Conference. And I had never attended, but I went for the first time because Candace Nelson, the founder of Sprinkles and Pizzana, was speaking and was the keynote speaker. And my first business that I ever started was as a home baker. And I read her book. It inspired me. So when I saw her at Velocity, I was like, oh, I've got to be there in the room. And it was just this amazing moment to be able to, one, hear her, to shout her out. During the Q&A, I was hand raised. I want to tell her that I read her book and I was it felt like I had a friend with me the whole step of the journey of starting my bakery. So thank you. And afterwards, I got to talk to her. And it's amazing when you get to meet your heroes, the titans, the people whose story is holding you up. And you get to tell them that the impact that they're having on you is just big heart moment. And I just was so grateful to UCLA and to Candace to be able to have that opportunity to pour into somebody who has given me so much just by sharing her story. Yeah. Yay. That's me.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we're going to start the land the plane. I've got some bear hugs. We're going to end with that. But before, this is a little trip to Paris. So when we interviewed back it was the fall of 2016, because I have young children, they're older now, but they were younger. My younger turned 13 yesterday. I have a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old.
2 teenagers.
2 teenagers. One of whom is about to be an 18-year-old. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
But 10 years ago, they were 10 years younger, and I lived under a rock, and I didn't know about modern culture. So I didn't know. I'd heard about Hamilton, maybe a tiny bit. And there's about 10 minutes on the podcast where Amber just riffed about, and she's so enrolling. I was like, I want to be an investor in Hamilton. But during COVID, it was strangely in that same May, June timeframe. That was such a tough time. And I finally heard the soundtrack on YouTube, and like the one that's got the lyrics. And then I fell in love with the lyrics, and there's just so much weird downtime during those months. And I probably listened to that soundtrack like 50 times.
Okay.
In 2 months. And then when they released the one that summer on Disney Plus or whatever, we all watched it as a family because I had my little Sonos speaker. My sons were like, "You listen to that a lot, Dad." But it's so fun to now, and we've seen it at Pantages when it comes. But in light of Hype and Harvest and your commitment that, first generation, that people of color, that, people who haven't had an opportunity to jump into the challenge of establishing a professional presentation of themselves. But the two songs, I'm not throwing away my shot. And I want to be in the room where it happens.
Yes.
It's so, it's like, like the art and the science, there's the science of, rows and columns and profit.
Yeah.
But then there's the art of relationships and reputation. I'm blending the R's and the P's. But, I've just wondered about like what kind of human genius could cross-reference, modern hip hop and like foundational historical, and see that, wow, that dude, kind of born a bastard on a Caribbean island of no means, could use his voice to become an architect of an experimental nation that's still cooking 250 years later, that has a whole genre of music, that celebrates people who have one talent, which is using their voice to say something about challenge that resonates the human journey. Anyway, yeah. It's cool stuff.
It holds up well. It is still a fantastic musical. I still put the soundtrack on every once in a while. And I love the two songs that you actually pulled out from it, right? The Not Throwing Away My Shot goes back to you have power.
Yeah.
Right? Like he had power. He didn't have all the power, didn't have as much power as he wanted in any circumstance, but he knew, Hamilton, how to wield the power that he had. And I think there's something to be said for each of us learning how to wield the power that we have. But I love also, you said The Room Where It Happens, right? Like, love that number. Love Leslie Odom. Went to college together. Yeah, we're both Carnegie Mellon. There's a lot of Carnegie Mellon alum happening in the original cast of Hamilton.
I did not know that.
I love it. I'm very proud of them. But when you said The Room Where It Happens, and what the thought that came to my mind was, and he wasn't sitting on a chair on the outside, you all, like, get to the table, right? Because that's what we do in our career, is we're like, we want to be in the room where it happens. And then we take a seat up against the wall. And I'm like, no, if I'm in the room, I'm at the table, I'm using my voice, like don't just get in the room, but do something while you're there, right? Like Burr wanted to be in the room and do something while he was there. But what's fun is I have another musical recommendation for you. It is not, I am not as like rabid fan about it as Hamilton, but it's a fun twist. What I love about Burr's story, and when you would listen to Leslie Odom's interviews of talking about the character, is he always like had such empathy for Aaron Burr, because it's like, what would it be like to be remembered by your worst, your worst decision in one day, right? Like one day you make a really bad decision, and that's how we remember a life. So another musical that I saw, I was in New York last fall. It's a bit older, but it's still really good. Have you heard of the musical Six?
No.
Okay, so SIX, the number 6. Six, the musical, currently running on Broadway. It originated in London's West End. It is a very fun pop musical that tells the story of the 6 wives of Henry VIII.
Well,
but I won't give it away, but essentially, right, the joke that we make about them is like, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived, like the old rhyme. And they've all been relegated to just one word in a rhyme. What if they got to tell their story?
Ooh.
And that's what the musical 6 is.
Okay, well, I will not wait nearly as long as I waited last time to
Yes.
come out from under my rock.
If you like pop music, it's super fun. It's a very short musical. It literally feels like you're going to a party when you see the show live.
Ooh.
But listen to the soundtrack, the US recording,
Okay.
not the UK. It's very fun, easy to listen to, but just, again, a way that people get to be remembered for more than their worst moment, for more than one word, and just turning these characters of history into fully developed humans.
Oh, I love it. Okay, you should be in marketing.
Yes.
All right. So I haven't done this one in a couple of podcasts. Little bear hug. We used to do this during COVID, so I passed the bear over. So,
yay.
you know, we pay it forward.
Yes.
You know, and you've already alluded to this. Like, that's also part of the victory of accomplishing something is then you have something to give.
Yes.
So none of us get here alone. It takes a village to raise an MBA, to raise a professional in the world. So if you wanted to do some bear hugs, some shout outs.
Yes.
You've already done some faculty ones, but just if you wanted to underline any of the faculty that have kind of resonated over this decade.
Yeah. I'm going to resonate. Again, Professor Janessa Shapiro, who passed away several years ago, was my foundations and org behavior professor. Yeah. Still love and think of her fondly. Professor Ullmen, man, like the wisdom, those 3 R's and so many things that he teaches, I've just been able to continue building and learning on with. And so I really appreciate that foundation, Professor McCann and presentation. And also I love Professor Spiller. He taught consumer behavior. Mm-hmm. So core marketing or important marketing class, really about understanding consumers and, you know, what their needs are. It's been a lot to me, especially as an entrepreneur, because don't fall in love. What do they say? Don't fall in love with your product or your solution. Fall and become obsessed with the customer's problem. I'm obsessed with learning about what people are experiencing in corporate and how to innovate and solve through the art and skill of coaching.
Ooh, I love it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
This is good stuff. Listen to her.
Listen to these professors.
Well, okay. Fair enough. You're paying it.
Get off your phones in their class.
And, you know, a classmate, you know, a friend from school.
Yeah. Jill Manor, my little USC undergrad, but we've gotten over it. She's just been one of my most important friendships that has come out of our time at UCLA. I don't know how we are sorted into, it's not like the sorting hat in Harry Potter, but I don't know how we get...
The group assignment process, yes. You know, it's so I'm a Hufflepuff.
I don't know how we get sorted into our cohorts.
Cedric works real hard the month of August.
But that has been a friendship that has blessed my whole life. So thank you to her and thank you to whomever sorted us together. I have really, really enjoyed the past 13 years and excited for many more to come.
And you don't have to choose one, but if we did the 3 pillars, you know, I became more intelligent, I became better connected, I became more confident. If you had to pick one, which do you think was the superior impact?
I became more confident.
Confident.
Yeah. Okay.
It's so hard for me to imagine you not confident. You just got to get that's cognitive dissonance for me, but
where are you confident at? Right.
Okay.
So
okay.
If you're asking me to like kind of like have opinions and be confident about them, that was natural. Confidence in business, I always describe that pre-MBA, it was like Swiss cheese. I knew some things, but I had real gaps and I didn't know what those gaps were. I literally, like I chose FEMBA, its duration, the rigor of the program, because I was like, I want to be confident that even if I'm not an expert, I still understand how a business works and it operates. And that makes me actually a really powerful marketer. Because when I would go into marketing, I could still see like working on like product releases at Disney, and I would have to pitch, you know, strategies, marketing strategies for like how we would sell products. But I had finance in the room. I had operations in the room. I had senior leaders in the room. I had so many different teams and levels of organization. And I learned how to confidently present because I was like, no, I understand what the operations person is going to ask me when I run this promotion. How is it going to change like demand and planning, right? I know what finance is going to ask me. That's the confidence that I get from the MBA, is just having a whole, complete, well-rounded understanding of how business works.
Thank you for synthesizing that.
Yeah.
Is there such thing as a favorite Anderson moment? If so, that may be a hard question. Not a good question.
I'm going to share a moment that it's funny. It's not really memory of mine, but it's a gift that this person keeps giving to me, and it affirms something in me. In this season of like being a coach, I keep being reminded of who I've been. Like somebody a couple of weeks ago was like, "Oh, Amber, you were like helping me with my career in 2010 after a layoff." And I was like, "Oh wait, I've been doing this work of coaching for a lot longer than maybe I've had the title." So my favorite memory actually is from Professor Freixes, Gonzalo.
Aww.
He reminded me, he's done it before, and he reminded me in December that my very first FEMBA Council meeting, I showed up. I don't know if you were there, if you remember.
I was probably there, but I'm now curious.
He remembers, but he says that like, Amber, you made your mark because you came into that council meeting and you had a list of things that your section wanted to ask for. Not like a list of demands, but like a list of, things that were falling short of our expectations that we wanted to see different. And he said, and the difference was you came not only with a list, but you came with solutions that you were already like trying to solve on your own, and where you needed help because you couldn't solve it on your own. And he was like, that was such a difference. Like that was so memorable for him. And when he gives me that memory, I'm like, oh yes, Amber, because that is who you are, right? I don't come to people with problems. I'm a solution finder. I'm a builder, a connector, and I ask for help when I can't get further. But I love when he shares that with me, because it just reminds me something about who I am that I value a lot.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
He knows so many people, and that he could remember that moment. I love it.
Yeah.
Because you have to be present to witness the moment, and then to even file it and remember it. That's
Absolutely.
Great. All right. Last one. If you could tell pre-MBA Amber, knowing what you know now, if you could tell her one thing about this, leaping into this graduate school experience, what might you tell her?
I would have told her to make more time for play. That version of me was an overachiever. It's how I know how to talk to overachievers so well today. She was an overachiever, and she was constantly just trying to figure out like what work she had to do to get the next promotion. And if I could go back to her, I would say every moment of your life isn't supposed to be monetized. And so find ways to play and have hobbies, and they will become things that you can monetize in the future, but don't only do the things that you can monetize or that will get you promoted or that you think will get you promoted. Don't overinvest in your work. Don't, 50-hour-a-week job. Stop giving it 60 because you think it's going to help you get ahead. Yeah, and instead
take results.
Stop focusing on the results and take those 10 hours to just like play and discover, because it's from that you'll find the idea to build on your own and go into entrepreneurship or side hustle, whatever you want to call it. But it's going to come from in creating time and space to just be at play. Yeah.
Well, this has been a treat.
So is this. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. How do people find you?
Oh yeah. So find me. I'm Amber Jackson, LinkedIn, Amber Jackson. I've got a bright yellow background, so easily identifiable. And they can find me on Instagram at Hype and Harvest. Don't look for me on TikTok. Yes, I have a TikTok account, but y'all, I am a bit of an older millennial. So Instagram and LinkedIn are where I like to play.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh, this has been a decade in the making.
Yes.
This is for you third-year FEMBAs and first-year FEMBAs and friends of Anderson of all stripes and flavors. Amber Jackson, class of 2015. Just one of my favorite people, but I say that for every guest, so I'm a liar. But it's true.
We're all your favorite.
But you give off life, and that you've reinvented yourself to have your avocation and your vocation align. That you can take these overachievers and help them find satisfaction, not just results. That's a beautiful thing. So thank you for telling your story. Thanks for inspiring the people you're going to inspire with this part 2, and maybe we'll do it again in 10 years.
I mean,
it could happen. Maybe not, but yes. This is a moment right now, and thank you for this moment.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great always talking to you, Dylan.
All right.
Yes.
Thanks, Amber. All right.
We did it. Thank you.
My